It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, April 3rd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is just overwhelmed with joy about the goaltending situation with new blood in the mix.
It's interesting.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, so we are going to get into Alexei Kolosov joining the Phantoms, as well as checking in on our prospects who are in the CHL playoffs, get to your mailbag questions, but I want to dig a little bit more into the John Tortorella comments post-game for Monday night against the Islanders, because he did not mince words at all.
No, I'm look. I'm fine with the fact that he didn't mince words. What I do feel like he's crossing the line with is he's not the lone talent evaluator on this team, and he acts like he already knows who can handle this, who can't, and and what should happen after that. And that's not collaborative in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because he's spot on. And we've talked about this, I want to say in January, as we were approaching the midway point of the season and the All-Star break, we were like, it's a whole different ball game after the break because, teams step it up a notch, and the teams with playoff experience are going to get in their best position to make the playoffs and to be successful in the playoffs. And this team doesn't have that kind of experience. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for them. And lo and behold, it has been that interesting challenge, right?
Right. Which is to be expected. And the thing is,
totally.
And here's what I want to say about it. You can't always judge players by one playoff run. You can't, especially when they're young players. And this is the first time they're experiencing it. I know he thinks he can, but I feel like I diverge from that because I feel like, as an example, okay, let's say Morgan Frost is one of those players and he already is on the outs. So now are they going to just trade Morgan Frost because it's like, yeah, he can't do it. And then someday if Morgan Frost is on a Stanley Cup team, what do you say? I mean, there are mistakes that get made that way in the heat of the moment.
Right. Well, I guess what I was getting at is that we know that, but he said as much in that presser. He says it's a different kind of hockey in this part of the season, and we're learning things about these guys, about who can handle it and who can't. And so he's half right there. That's the thing. He's so close to getting the point, and he's just missing the mark on I think, judging too harshly based on, this particular playoff run in a vacuum.
Right.
Simply because there is a lack of experience here. And these guys have to get that experience. This team hasn't, the bubble aside, which I think is fake, honestly. Yes. And I don't really count it in this realm of experience. But this team does not have playoff experience at all, has not for a very long time in any manner of consistent way. And so you just got to go through it. You got to just push through, right? And you can't get too down on yourself in this situation, I think, on an individual player level, on a team level. I understand, he has his motivational tactics or whatever he does. But at the same time, I just feel like he is so close to getting it right and then just can't get across the finish line in the right way.
Right, but it's kind of like if this is an IndyCar race and your car is running out of gas and you know there's 3 laps left, it doesn't matter how you run those 3 laps, you're still gonna run out of gas.
Right. Right.
And it's hard to motivate guys that are out of gas. You know, he feels like he's gonna, break through this barrier. And as an example, like Sean Couturier could not break through that barrier. Matter of fact, it went the opposite way.
Right.
Cam Atkinson can't break through that barrier. Why? Because he's never faced this before in his life. Like this is all new after coming
Yeah.
back from an injury like that. Like these are things players are very much creatures of habit and know how their bodies are and everything else until they're in these kinds of situations that they've never been in before. And so it's only motivational for some of those, that are healthy. But for the ones that aren't healthy, I don't think it's motivational at all when the coach says that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it could go either way. It could be motivational for some guys and not others, and
Correct.
it's like, is the damage you might cause to those others worth what you're gonna get out of the ones that it does work for?
Right. Right.
And I think that's an open question. I don't
It
think
is.
it's a good or bad. I think it's a question at
Yeah.
this point, and it's a choice. But it leads us to, with all the lineup and who he's liking and not liking right now, is he going to go 11-7 again?
Yeah, I think there's a chance because I think if he looks at the game film, which he will, or just goes back in his mind and says who had the worst turnovers and such, then I think he's going to go back to 11-7. Um, I don't suggest it, but again, now the problem is if you're going 11-7 and now you have a new goaltender, how's all that going to work out? Like there's a lot of, new things, different things now with not much time left in the season. And so it's hard to implement things late in the season. Like they can't even get the power play straight. Now all of a sudden they're gonna, get a new goaltender straight and maybe go 11-7 again. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot and it's a lot of risks, and as I've said, I'm happy with them taking risks and having it not work out in terms of making the playoffs, in order to get them in a good position heading into this off season, and going into next season. This is a house money season for me, but, I do think, like, you just
It's
have to
house
consider.
money as long as you don't draw your full conclusions just
Yeah.
based on the season and not
And you don't
anything.
cause harm. And you don't cause harm. I think
Right.
those are the 2 things,
Yeah.
like, s I think those are the 2 things, we gotta keep an eye on, but yeah, it's all gonna be, really interesting to watch. Meanwhile, as expected, Alexei Kolosov, is here and has been officially assigned to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, 3rd round draft pick in 2021. He signed his, ELC last offseason, if we recall,
Yep.
and was sent on loan
Yep.
to Dynamo Minsk, and so is gonna finish out the first year here with the Phantoms. They have 8 games left, making the grand assumption he did not play in the game last night. We're recording
Right.
before, that took place, but I'm assuming they'd wait till the weekend to put him in, which is what we talked
But you
about
never
on
know.
Phantoms
Like,
Tuesday.
we would have thought the same
Yeah.
thing about Fedotov, and it didn't happen that way. But yeah, most likely.
Most likely. So, I think, he played generally really well in the KHL this season, had some really good success, 4
Yeah.
shutouts, 907 save percentage in the regular season, 925 save percentage in 6 games in the playoffs, 2.21 goals against in the playoffs, pretty
I mean, he
good.
had a better season than Fedotov. I mean, he did.
Yeah, he did. So I think that this will be a really good starting off point for him. And my God, I cannot wait for the goalie battles at camp this offseason. It's going to be a
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. It's going to be a lot. It will. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think I think it'll be really good and really motivational for all of them,
Yeah, I
to
don't
be
think there's a
honest.
problem with any of that. The only thing they're going to have to figure out is, um, well, I mean, Kolosov will start the year in Lehigh. Then they kind of have
Right.
to figure out in how they're going to do it with the Flyers. Is it going to be a strict tandem? Is it going to be now all of a sudden Urson is the backup? Like, I mean, you got to figure that out. But you can't just go into the season not having it figured out.
Yep, absolutely. So I am going to look forward to all of that discourse in the off season. In the meantime, some of the Flyers prospects are in the CHL playoffs in junior hockey, and we are going to check in on them coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Now, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. My favorite part of the Game Time app is you get notified about those flash deals. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seats before you buy. Game Time lets you save even more with zone deals where you pick a section and Game Time chooses the seat and all in pricing. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. Also, your tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On tomorrow's show, we will be doing our regular Thursday draft eligible prospect profile. And we took a suggestion from one of our listeners, Mike, and we are going to talk about Leo Salin Wallenius, a Swedish defenseman. I'm really excited to do that. So thank you, Mike, for the suggestion.
Yeah, good suggestion. I watched him in the Five Nations, so he's a fun guy to watch.
CHL playoffs. So starting with the big guns in the OHL, of course, Denver Barkey and Oliver Bonk of the London Knights. They are in the first round of the playoffs. They're facing the Flint Firebirds. In the first two games of this series, before last night, London was up 2-0. Both guys contributing significantly in both of these games so far. In game one, Oliver Bonk was third star of the game. Denver Barkey had an assist on the empty net goal at the end. And then in game two, they each had a goal and an assist. So really good start for the playoffs for them.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good team. They had Dickinson on there too. He's going to be a top pick in this draft. So yeah, they have the potential to go far. So I'm not surprised. Spoke to Bonk a week ago, and he was pretty excited about what laid ahead. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and what lie ahead. And so yeah, I mean, he was all pumped up. I figured he was going to do well, and I figured Barkey would do well too.
Yeah, I love having both of these guys signed. Just in some of the highlights and parts of the games that I saw, Bonka's just really smart, like heads up on his play. When he makes a mistake, he knows it's on him. Like he's really like clear about what he's doing right, and you could see him like trying to learn from those mistakes and make up for them. Yeah, and then Denver Barkey, man, he looks so good on the power play in particular. He's such a good puck mover on the power
Mhm.
play, and it was almost as if he was the quarterback of it and not the defenseman,
Right.
which
Yeah,
I
he's
thought was really interesting.
he does well there. He definitely shines.
Yeah, like he just took charge. Like you could tell. Like he was like, "Give me the puck. I'm going to give you the like no question who was in
Right.
charge for his power play unit out there." It's just something to keep an eye on. He did have 3 penalties in that second game as well, but it was an intense game from what I
Yeah.
understand. Heading over to the WHL, Carson Bjarnason plays for the Brandon Wheat Kings. As we know, he signed his ELC during this season with the Flyers. Brandon is not great, gotta say.
No.
They're facing Moose Jaw in this first round of the playoffs, and it has been a rough go of things for Carson Bjarnason. He got pulled in the first game. He played the entire game, but he gave up 5 goals in each game.
Yeah, it has been kind of rough. I feel for him. It's not a great team. I understand the defense isn't great in front of him. It's a combination of everything. He just needs to have a good summer and get back at it next year. Just forget about this year.
Yeah, I think that is probably really good advice. Do some good training in the off
Yeah.
season, tweak some things, and figure out how he can improve a little bit and just get a hard reset going into next year. Obviously, Brandon lost both of those games, but we'll see if he gets in any more of them for the remainder of that series, and keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, Carter Sotheran, who was the 2023 fifth round pick by the Flyers, right-handed defenseman, plays for the Portland Winterhawks, and he is having a real good season, I gotta say. His regular season, 40 points in 66 games. Again, for a defenseman, that's really impressive.
Yep.
And in the WHL, I think is a really good league for developing
Uh-huh.
defensemen in particular. And they are facing the Victoria Royals in their series. And so far, he has a goal and 2 assists in those 2 games. And especially in that first game, he was the second star of the game. Really great move on his goal, a little deke. They got the goaltender move in. So I was really impressed by that. He's creating a ton of chances through some real big hits, as he is wont to do. Just a really good March overall for him. 5 goals, 8 assists in March.
Yeah, really solid play by him. He's always had talent. I mean, he showed a lot of talent even before he got into the dub. So yeah, so far so good for him.
Yeah, I am really thrilled for him. Hopefully, Portland can continue their success, and we'll get to see a lot more of him as well. The playoff situation in the queue for Flyers fans is really interesting because we have, of course, Alexis Gendron, who started the season with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. If we recall, at some point in the season, he was sent back to junior hockey with Drummondville. And we had some mixed feelings about that. Is
Oh yeah,
that league going to do
still do.
anything for him? Yeah, and still absolutely do. Drummondville is playing St. John, who is the home of our other prospect, Mateo Mann,
Mhm.
in the queue. So we'll get to him in a little bit. But with Gendron, he wound up his time with Drummondville in the regular season, 16 games and 18 points.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. I don't know what that really did for him.
I don't know either. I'm not sure like if this has turned out to be the right thing for him
Yeah,
moving
I'm not sure either.
forward. And Mateo Mann, a 7th round 2023 pick, right-handed defenseman. We saw him at development camp,
He did.
and he is definitely a project, we'll say.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely a project. I'm not gonna judge too harshly. Let it get he's getting through the year. That's good. Let's see him have a good summer and see what happens next year.
Right. I think, with a guy like him, he had 13 points this season in 42 games. Again, as a big defenseman, seems about right.
Yeah,
But,
it does.
for a first year
Yes.
defenseman in the
Yeah,
queue.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
But I think with him, with these like deep in the draft guys, like a 7th rounder, you want to look for what happens between year 1 and year 2 to get an
You do.
indication as to if there's something there.
You want to
And
see if there's some
so,
progression.
yeah, yeah, so we shall see. But, all these guys are continuing to play in the playoffs. Hopefully, we get more of them than others into future rounds, and we will definitely check in with them as we have been doing with the college guys in the
Mhm.
Frozen Four as well. And
Free
we'll
agents are
probably
getting
do,
snapped up.
yep, they are. So that's another thing we'll
Jackson
probably
Nelson
talk
got
about.
snapped up. Remember, I talked about him last year and this year.
Yep. Absolutely. So a lot of moving parts as the junior and college hockey seasons are winding up for a lot of these kids. We do have a lot of your mailbag questions to get to as well. Some really good ones related to Tortorella, related to the team as a whole, goaltending, prospects, all of it. So we will do that coming up next.
The sports calendar is loaded and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you could use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Uh, right now, just keep riding Kate and Clark in Iowa. They're in the I almost said Frozen Four. They're in the Final Four, and she had 41 points, 9 3-pointers. It's just a whirlwind. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet with a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book.
So your mailbag questions start with I think I want to kind of combine the first two questions because they are
Okay.
very related. So Andrew asked, is there a world where Torts doesn't come back as the head coach next season? I like the structure, but the personnel tactics are questionable. Chris asked, would Craig Berube be a good fit for the Flyers next season? Torts seems to want out and isn't in the mood for a rebuild.
Um, yeah, I think there's a 50% chance he gets bumped upstairs, and Craig is still in the building. I see him every game. So, for what that's worth.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. I've noticed that as well with Berube being around, and you have to wonder, like, does he want another coaching role or does he want an advisor role?
No,
Is
no, he
he
wants a
gonna
coaching role. I'm pretty sure of that.
You think so?
Yeah,
I just wonder if he would wanna come back to the Flyers.
I think he would.
You
I think
think in
remember
that
him and Keith
capacity?
Jones are best friends, so I think he probably would feel pretty comfortable. He's won a cup, so he's got that. He's got a little cup swagger. Uh, yeah, he knows everybody in the organization. It would be an easy transition.
Yeah, I gotta think that Tortorella is back next season. If I was gonna lean on those scales a little bit, I think it's close to 50-50, but I would give it the edge that he's coming back.
I
I
mean, and
just
that's
think
fair
like
to do. I think that it's something that depending on how these next six games go, could decide that. I basically said on Sirius, and I'll say it here. The more unkempt his beard gets, the more that I would start tipping the scales the other way.
it is like that is an excellent point. He has been looking a little raggedy
Uh huh.
recently.
Things are getting to him a little bit.
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, is he just like can he not, like, do his hair because of the thumb situation and he can't shave?" I don't know what's happening. But,
I could do it
y
one arm.
yeah, I don't know, but there's something going on there
Yep.
for sure. But yeah, I think that I don't think Berube would wanna come back in an assistant coach
No.
capacity
No.
because
No. No.
he's in head coach territory right now, but,
Yeah.
yeah, that whole conversation is gonna be really interesting in the off season depending on what happens, to your point. Frank, said that no team is giving Felix Sandstrom a shot next season. What do you think?
Disagree. I think somebody will give him a shot. And I'm not saying they're giving him a shot for an NHL job. I think they'll give him a tryout or they'll sign him to an AHL deal and he'll have to prove himself. But I think someone will want him.
I think so too. I There's definitely something there, and
Yeah.
the circumstances he's had to deal with all the changes and the pressure and everything.
I mean, we could
He
go
got
back into the annals and say, did Chuck Fletcher make the right decision on Anthony Stellaris? And we already know the answer to that.
correct. Absolutely. As we know, Flyers goaltending has been kind of a running joke in a lot
Yeah.
of people's circles in terms of giving up on guys too soon,
Yep.
and in terms of just having weird stuff happen. And
Yep.
lo and behold, this season, a lot of weird stuff happened
Yep.
and things that you just can't plan for in a lot of ways. So, but I do think that Sandstrom has kind of been a victim of circumstance in some ways,
Yeah. I
and
think to some degree that's true.
yeah, and so I think that somebody should give him a shot next season, but I don't think it will be the Flyers.
No, it won't be.
Ben wants to know, has your metrics for success for this team changed over the season, or is it the same as it was preseason? And if so, how?
So my metrics, and it's funny, I get asked this a lot. My metrics for success are yes, it's good that the team has sort of moved forward and has a winning attitude. That part's fine. No, in the sense that I don't think enough young guys are getting used in key situations down the stretch because the minute they make a mistake, you see what happens. He gets crazy about it, and guys start to lose ice time. So the way I see it is that the metric is good that they're winning and they're gaining something from winning. I don't think they're gaining as much as they could for development. I'm sure of that. And so next year is now going to be a key because, for argument's sake, let's say they fall just short of the playoffs. And John goes in there and says, we got to get a couple more veterans again, and maybe he wants them on the blue line. Well, then that's when Danny Briere has to have a real conversation with them and say, listen, I want some of these young guys to stay here, and I
Right.
need to, see more of them. And that's where maybe some of these other things could be a problem. So I think it's more to the positive than to the negative, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. I think that um I still don't think using making the playoffs as a measure of success is useful this
Right,
season, whether they do or don't when it all plays
right.
out.
It's
I
not the
just
end all for what we're talking about. That's very
yeah,
well said.
and yeah, and so I think that aspect of it has not changed for me. Would I love it if they made the playoffs? Absolutely. It would be super cool to watch a playoff game that I had a vested interest in.
Sure.
I think and I think it would be a good reward for some of the hard work
Yeah.
and what they have built this season. So don't get me wrong, but I don't think that that should have been the goal at the beginning of the season and necessarily, and I don't think it should be a judgment level for whether or not this season was a success. I think all the getting ducks in a row, getting these guys experience, like getting the young guys in, like you talked about, that's all the things that were more important to me this season, and that has not changed at all. All right, last question. Chaz Bear 10 on Twitter wanted to know about a draft eligible prospect and says, the Flyers won't be in a position to get some of the top guys. From what I've been reading about Michael Brancic Nygaard, could he fall to the Flyers around 20? Could he have more upside than what he's reported?
I don't think so because the
You don't
aggression.
think he'll be there, or do
I
you
don't
think
think
he's
he'll be
not
there.
worth it?
Sorry, yeah, no,
Okay.
he is worth it. I don't think he'll be there. I think the aggression that he plays with, I want to say he's what 6'2", something like that. So he's got a little bit of size. He's an unusual one, and because he's an unusual one in this draft, I don't think he could get past 12. So I think somebody's going to play because he does score. He's not like a highfalutin goal scorer or point guy, but he can put it up. But he could put some up but also play a very rugged game too. And I think that's gonna be the deal.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, looking at rankings and just reading about him, it seemed like to me 15 would be the lowest he would go.
Yeah,
But
and
I
I'd be
think 12
surprised.
sounds about right.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow with the latest on the Flyers and our prospect profile on Leo Salin Wallenius, like we talked about. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer, you can send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russell at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.